Good morning again, everybody. So today we continue our series that we've started on the creation story. One of the things that I hear about often from people is the question or wondering about where they are in their spiritual journey. Am I going to heaven? Or what can I do now? What does the Lord want from me? Am I good enough? All these kind of questions where we wonder about how we measure up to heaven and wondering about the path that we walk. And these questions come about for many reasons, but perhaps for some there's a sense of stagnation. I've done what I've thought I needed to do, and I just feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Or perhaps it's a feeling of not really knowing the path to walk, and I don't know what's next. I don't know what the Lord desires of me. Perhaps there's a little bit of doubt, or I've lost my way, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling disillusioned with my faith. And so we ask questions about, where am I on my spiritual journey? So in this series of creation, we are trying to discover something new about the path that the Lord desires for us. This story of creation is the oldest story that we have in our faith. It is the oldest story that has been passed down to man through many generations. And in this very, very first, very old story, the Lord gives to us the path that He wants us to journey with Him on. The story of creation is about the story of how the Lord wants to journey with us to create something new within us, create our lives anew. In the new church, we call it regeneration. We might also call it a rebirth or being born again. All of those speak to what the Lord desires for us, to work with Him, to walk with Him through this journey, through the story of creation, that He can create something afresh in our lives. A second birth, a spiritual birth. That's what the story of creation is trying to lead us to, trying to guide us through. And if we can understand the story in a deeper way, we get to understand that journey that the Lord is calling us to. What are the steps of that journey? And it can then help us to figure out, well, what do I need to do as part of that journey? Where is the Lord in this journey? And so, by understanding the journey, we get a sense of hope, we get a sense of strength, that we know where to go and what to do. But also by learning about the story, we learn about the difficulties that we will encounter, the struggles that we will go through in this journey. But we will also discover the blessings that await us, the joy that we can come to expect and hope for. And so this is an important journey, an important story that the Lord gives to us so that we can better understand where we are and what the Lord requires of us along this journey. So I want to recap a little bit of where we have been, because I think it's important to get a sense of the flow of the story of creation, because it's in the flow that we understand more about what we need to do and what the Lord is doing. So day 1, 2, and 3 together describe us getting to know ourselves better, getting to understand the Lord a little bit better, and getting to understand our darkness a little better. Day one represents that darkness in us, that selfish tendency where we are lost in our own world, lost in our own thinking, until there is light, until the Lord opens up our minds to, well, hang on, this can be different. This should be different. Where is the Lord in this? Where is life within what I'm currently doing? And then the Lord can lead us out of that. And day two, we see a state of learning, of distinguishing between what are higher truths, what are more heavenly and spiritual truths, versus what are worldly truths. And so distinguishing, well, what are those important things that I need to know in my life? And then day three of the growing of the plants represents that time that we spend trying to do what we've learned, trying to put into action the things that we know. That's those tender herbs starting to grow. We probably find ourselves in day 1, 2, and 3 for most of our lives. That's my guess. From my experience, day 1, 2, and 3 is where we're at. It's the struggle of learning and of trying to put things into action and learning through those actions of more darkness. And so day 1, 2, and 3 are really important. Right? God said, it is good. It is good to be able to reflect on our lives, to see the darkness. It is good to be learning from His truths. It's good to be trying to do what He teaches. And then day 4 marks a change in our life. Day 4 marks a miracle. Nathan said it last week. It is a miracle. There's a miracle that happens on day represented by day 4 that impacts everything about our life. We move from what Nathan described as that light in the sky before dawn or before the sun rises. There's light in the sky. That's our first awakening. To being able to see the source of the light. And that's our spiritual progression. We come to understand that we need the Lord in our lives, and we get to a point in our lives where we know the Lord in our lives. We know the source. We can feel the source in our lives. Day 1 to day 4. So today, in day 5, we are looking at, well, what is the effect of that day 4, of the Lord being present in our lives? What does that look like? What does that look like? How can we recognize it in our lives? Because even though we might feel like we're in day 1, 2, and 3 all the time, we have experienced day 5 and day 6 and day 7. We have experienced it. So what does that feel like? What does that look like? Can we understand it? Can we recognize it to give us hope as we move forward in the battles in day 1, 2, and 3? So what changes in day 5? What is the change that we can recognize? What is it that the Lord is reforming and reshaping that gives a new life, that gives that rebirth? And that's what day 4 marks, is a rebirth, that moment where we are now experiencing spiritual life. I want to read to you from the book Secrets of Heaven, number 39. It's a book by Emanuel Swedenborg. It's the teachings that we use for the new church. After the great lights are kindled and placed in our inner self, okay, we think about the lights were in the heavens. The heavens represent our inner self. They're kindled and placed in our inner self, and the outer self is receiving light from them. The time arrives when we first start to live. So day 4 marks that point where we first Start to live, to really live. And as I was thinking about this idea, it's thinking about we're in our lives thinking that we know everything, thinking that we understand everything, and then getting to a point where our minds open up and it's like, wow, there is so much more. There is so much more to what life has to offer. There is so much more joy and so much more happiness. There is so much more fullness to life. And so that first awakening to, wow, there is so much more. That first real spiritual awakening to real spiritual life. So that's what the great lights represent. Continue reading. Earlier in the process, we can hardly be said to have been alive, thinking as we did that the good that we perform and the truths that we speak originate in ourselves. And so this is the barrier, or this is the state that makes the spiritual journey difficult, is when we first start off, we're in a selfish place. Right? We're in a very closed, inward-looking place, and it's hard to think outside of us. It's hard to sacrifice what we have for other people. So we think that we perform good and that we think truth, that we produce those things from ourselves. We continue reading. On our own, we are dead and have nothing but evil and falsity inside. Now, I want to pause there for a moment. That is an important piece of information there, right? That of ourselves we are dead, we have evil and falsity in ourselves, but I don't want you to get stuck on that, right? It's easy to get stuck on that negative and go, oh, but I'm all evil, I'm all false, there's nothing good about me. The reason why the Lord gives us that is so that we can acknowledge that that is a truth, that that is a reality within me, so that I can look out for it. And that's the important part, is if we never know anything about it, we don't know what to look for. So part of this process of being reborn, of rebirth, is being able to reflect and look for those dark places in our life. So that information is there, not to get you down, not to beat you down, but to help us in our journey in recognizing what we're looking for. What is it the Lord's trying to lead us away from? So we continue reading. So we're nothing but evil and falsity inside, with the result that nothing we produce from ourselves has life. So true is it that by our own power we cannot do anything good, at least not anything inherently good. This reminds us of the parable that the Lord tells about the bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Only a good tree can bear good fruit. So this is the process that the Lord is trying to get us away from. He's trying to change that side of us that is negative, that is selfish, that is hurtful, that is full of evil and falsity, to something that is good, that can produce more good and more love. So that's an important part of our life, to realize that we are in evils and falsities, and we cannot produce good things from selfish things. But that's what day 1, 2, and 3 are about. Day 1, 2, and 3 are all about us thinking that we can produce what is good and think what is true. The Lord doesn't say that can't happen. The Lord says it is good. It is part of the process. It is necessary. You have to go through that. You have to do good things outwardly, but that are actually come from a selfish place. You have to go through that process. It's all part of the learning. So what changes? What changes in us from that bad tree to that good tree? What is it that is changing? Day 5 looks specifically, like I said, with the children, about the way we think about things. Thinking like angels. Thinking like angels. As we've gone through the process of day 1, 2, and 3 and learnt more and more things, what's been happening is been building up a conscience. We can get different types of conscience about certain different things, but essentially a conscience is the principles upon which you base your life. So we can have civil conscience. So what am I going to do as a citizen of this country? What are the principles I'm going to live by as a citizen? I'm going to pay my taxes, I'm going to vote, I'm going to stick to the right side of the road. All those things are part of being a citizen, having a civil-mindedness and sticking to those rules. Those principles become ours. We can have moral conscience about interacting with others and what is fair and equitable between people, how to look at people, greet them, say thank you. Those ideas. We can have a moral conscience. And as we're going through day 1, 2, and 3, what the Lord is trying to build up in us is a spiritual conscience. Learning, well, what are the spiritual principles at play here? Love one another. Love the Lord. There is a heaven. There is a hell. There is much more to this life than we first appears to us. There are principles that we learn and that we start to take into our conscience. And then in day 4 marks a change, and we see that in day 5. So I want to read to you from the book New Jerusalem, 133, also by Emanuel Swedenborg. He says, a genuine spiritual life, so being awakened, that newness of life, is a matter of having a true conscience. Because in our conscience, our faith is joined to our caring, or faith is joined to love. Nathan spoke last week about the two great lights are really one. The love and the faith, the sun and the moon, are really two parts of one whole. That marriage of love and faith is what the Lord is trying to bring to each one of our lives. That is the sacred marriage of love and faith. And when that happens in our conscience, when all our thoughts and our principles that we have are married to caring and thoughtfulness about others, then we're thinking like angels. Then we are living a spiritual life. I want to give you an example. I was speaking to someone this week about an experience they had. They were driving down Caryndale Road to Bean. If you've never been in this area, Caryndale Hill goes down, and as it nears Bean Drive, there's a turn in it just before the stop at the bottom. So he was driving down the hill, and he automatically stopped, when he saw a truck that was coming up the hill, and it was a transport truck, and it was carrying big earth-moving equipment for the construction site. And he automatically stopped as he saw this truck coming up to the bend, because he knew, without really thinking about it, that if he was the truck driver, he would need some space. And as the truck driver, he would appreciate other cars giving him this space to come around the corner. And so he automatically stopped. The truck driver got around the corner and waved, and there was a sense of peace, a sense of joy in having done that. That is a simple event in our life where our conscience, our principles have been married to caring and thoughtfulness about others. The other side, that situation could have happened from a very different motive of, well, I better stop because I don't want him to scratch my car. Right. So that's the selfish side of it, and the loving side of it as well. He needs space so that he can do his job nicely and he would appreciate that space. So let me give him that space. And so we see in a simple task, something very simple in life, how the Lord can bring a caring into what we do, a different quality into what we do, a new life into what we do. And so when we see the fish and we see the birds, they're living, they're alive. And I want you to think back to day 2 and day 5. The backdrop of those days are the same: the water and the expanse, the water and the expanse. Day 4 is a progression of day 2, where the water represents the knowledge that we have of the worldly things, this expanse, our inner self, and now there's something living in it. Those ideas are alive. Those facts are alive. The birds in the air represent the thoughts that we have, our rational thinking that is now alive. Alive with what? Alive with caring. Alive with love for other people. And so everything that we think and all the facts that we know are there because they support what is loving and caring. And so day 5, we can probably recognize in small doses in our life, where we do something almost instinctively. We know our principles, we can identify with another person, and we know just exactly how to help that person, and we reach out and we do it. There's no thought of reward. There's no second guessing ourselves. There is confidence that this is the right thing to do, and we do it lovingly for them and not for ourselves. And the result, there is that inner joy. There is that warm, fuzzy feeling, probably the best way to describe it, a warm, fuzzy feeling of just being able to help somebody in a way that they needed it. So we recognize that we have experienced day 5. We have experienced when our principles lead us in a caring way to help other people. But we do find ourselves back into day 1, 2, and 3. And so I think it's important to recognize day 5, know it, be able to feel it, and to realize that the Lord is working for the rest of our lives, because we're not a monolithic entity moving through these stages. The Lord is moving little bits and pieces of our lives backwards and forwards as we learn in new ways different parts of our lives. So hold on to that feeling. Hold on to that idea. You know what day 5 feels like. You know when your thoughts lead you in a loving way. And take that back to day 1, 2, and 3. To the parts of your life that are still self-compelled. I've got to do this. I know it's right, but it takes effort. And that's day 1, 2, and 3. It requires effort. But the Lord's promise to us is that He will perform a miracle. And He does perform a miracle. We felt that miracle in our life, which is day 5, of doing things instinctively because we know it. So the task that I want to leave with you as you go out this week is to observe in yourself those moments of day 5. That's the first task. Can you observe those moments of day 5 in your life where you freely give of yourself? And the other side of that, can you observe in your life those times when it's an effort, or where there isn't a marriage of caring with what you're thinking? So those two tasks. Can you notice the day 5, the good, the loving side of your thoughts? And can you see the negative side of your thoughts too? Where are you drawing from? The caring or the selfish? So I leave those thoughts with you as you go out into this week. Just observe what is happening inside me. What is the Lord trying to teach you this week? And there was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. Amen.